So thank you to those of you who are listening in. We're doing something a little bit new today, and we're going to be learning about people's stories, who they actually are as safety professionals. How did they start? What do they do in their personal time? Learning about real people, the human behind the screen. And so today with me, I've got Sam Hawkins Sr. So welcome, Sam.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And so you have a company which is a YDE Safety, right?
Yep.
So I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to share with us, about how you became a safety professional, your safety origin story. Can you share with us a bit, like, how did you fall into the safety profession?
Okay, I can share it, and I definitely fell in it. So my story goes back to like 97, I think. 97, I had got out of high school year before, and I was moved from Alabama to Toledo, Ohio, and I was working 3 jobs because I moved out, had this apartment. So I was working at Wendy's, I was working at a health club called 21st Century Super Fitness, and I was working 3rd shift at FedEx. And at some point in there, at Wendy's, a shift manager had one of his buddies came in and gave him an application to this place called Cousins Waste Control. They did hazardous waste cleanup and disposal. He was a shift manager, was making good money. He didn't take the application. I filled it out, went and dropped it off at the place. I got hired as a hazardous waste technician. And it's basically anything hazardous that everybody else runs from, you put on level B or level A suits and you clean it up. I literally had a shovel and was shoveling stuff to a vacuum truck or vacuum hose. But to start that job, before you ever got in the field, we had to go through 40-hour HAZWOPER training, confined space training, fall protection training, respiratory training. And just in the training, initially I was intrigued by the safety manager. This is the first company I ever worked with that I had a safety manager. I was intrigued with just his interaction with people. He was ex-Marine, and his interaction was, I really enjoyed it. And so I kind of took to that, and so just started having conversations with him. As I'm a year into working in the field in this company, I decided I was going to be a firefighter in the future. I'm like, this is great. I don't run from hard work, but I don't want to be 70 or whatever with this shovel and bent over, still shoveling to this hole. So I'm like, I'm gonna be a firefighter. So I started taking classes to prepare to be a firefighter when the exam comes up. And during that time, there were some safety classes that you take as part of the process. So now I'm 2 years in at this company. I'm still working in the field, and the company gets a contract to do some cleaning on a deep clean. So as they built a new auto plant, and before they could open the paint shop, you had to go from the rafters all the way down and clean all the construction dust out. So it was a deep clean from the building before they turned the system on. So initially it was just one shift, and he was safety over the shift, and I was working on it, fall protection, full doing 100% contact or 100% fall protection, connecting in the air, literally walking beams. And the project got behind. They added another shift and decided that, hey, if we're going to have another shift, we got to have safety on it. He's the only safety person in the company. He pulled me to the side and was like, Sam, didn't you take a couple safety classes out there? I'm like, yeah, I took like, a little bit. I got an OSHA 30, and a couple other things. And the summer from there, at nighttime, they decided I was the safety guy on the night shift. Project went on for a year. We completed it. My shift had no accidents, no injuries. The Chrysler, the construction managers, everybody gave me this little award. I still got a picture of me holding my $100 in my parking space that I got from completing it. After that, I went right back to the field, right back to shoveling. Did that for another year. 3 years in, that guy who's the safety manager moved on to another company. He went out from a safety manager to a safety director somewhere else. I think we may have went 3 months with no safety manager. About month 4, people started getting hurt, and the operations manager, the assistant operation manager, called me in his office and was like, Sam, look, people are getting hurt. If I give you the keys to Brian's office, Brian McDaniel was the previous safety manager. He's like, do you know what to do when you get in there? I said, yes. I didn't have a clue. He threw me the key. I walked in the office. I put up Brian's computer and spent weeks looking at what he used to do. So I dove right in, and that was my first start in the safety and kind of how I got into it.
So you really had a baptism of fire.
Yes.
In a way, eh?
Definitely. It was, people were getting hurt. There were recordables instantly. I'm talking, and when I say, I mean, I'm talking 2 a week, and it was insane. There was vehicle accidents that needed to be, do inspections or investigations, drug screens that weren't being done. It was a list from the jump. Yes.
So would you say that that was your biggest challenge to safety to date, or is there something that would even triumph that?
Oh, that wasn't my biggest challenge. Now, I will say that's a challenge. And the reason it was a challenge is, I'll be honest, I came in at that point where I had been to school 3 months. I had, 6 months. I had taken a few classes. While I was doing the other stuff, I was taking one class at a time. But even at that point, I wasn't going to school for safety. I was studying to be a firefighter. So I really didn't know safety. And so today you can go Google anything. You can pull up their OSHA's website and all that kind of stuff, or any of the regulations. Back then, I had to buy the books. So I bought the books. They were shipped to me. And again, these 2 thick books that you got. I'm looking at, I had to narrow down, like, what's my problems, or what are the work we do, and find those in the book and first learn the regulation. Now, the regulation would just tell me the bare minimum to do. So to be compliant, it doesn't necessarily tell me how to be safe. So it was now taking what I read with nothing to Google, nothing to look up, nobody to ask questions, and try to apply it in the field and figure out what works. So it wasn't like this was an instant success. Like, I would love to tell the story and say, hey, as soon as I got in, I turned it around. But it took me 2 years just to figure out what didn't work. So that was a huge obstacle in itself, but still wasn't my biggest obstacle.
So what would you say then was your biggest obstacle? If you were to look at your career in safety, what's the biggest challenge you had to overcome?
Truthfully, my biggest challenge that I've had to overcome, and I continue to overcome, and now I enjoy the challenge, is stereotypes. So I would just say, every company I've ever been in safety, when there's meetings, and there were management meetings, and they come to the table to talk and discuss, I've always been the only one that looked like me at that table. That's 23 years of this. I've always been the only one that looked at that. And that wasn't the concern. The concern was me having to retrain the brains of everybody else at the table. Me, and honestly, like, people expecting either, me to either show up late or not get stuff done, or not know what I'm talking about, or talk like, in a video. So I almost, the challenge for me was retraining them enough to where, and it didn't do it by talking. I had to do it with effort. So I had to go do the work. I had to go get the results, and they had to prove that, oh crap, that does happen, or he can do that, or they do that. So that's been my challenge. It's every door I walk through, every company I show up for, that's an issue. But the difference between 97 and now is I get over that hump a lot faster. It doesn't take them long now to say, okay, yeah, I trust this guy. He's got it. Let's move forward. So, but that's been my biggest challenge.
Breaking that barrier of being the individual who is Black at the table. And then I guess, are you saying fighting the stereotypes that people have seen play out in movies in different areas in society, and then them bringing that into their concept of the meeting? Can you walk us through that a little bit?
So yes, so I can walk you through that, and I'll tell you an actual experience and conversation that opened my eyes to this. So I didn't come in, I'll say, woke, and I knew I had to do this. I came in being myself. Just so happened I was on time because I value being on time. I did get the work done because I don't play when it comes to work, but I didn't know I was doing that. I had a conversation. I was working with a company, and a young lady walked up to me. Well, she was older than me, but we was both young. And she walked up to me and she was like, hey, me and my boyfriend was talking about you at home last night. And I was like, I almost called you. And I'm like, so, safety people, we got a phone. You're on call 24 hours. So everybody in the company got your number. And I was like, huh? You almost called me? Hey, I got a girlfriend. My wife was my girlfriend. And I'm like, don't call me. Get me in trouble. But she was like, no, it wasn't that. She was like, we were watching the movie Save the Last Dance, I think is the name of the movie. And if I'm right, but it's a dancing movie. I know it's a black kid in there, and I don't watch a lot of movies, so I don't know his name. But he talks and speaks, I guess, real eloquent in the movie, and I guess he really projects himself. And she said they were talking, and her boyfriend was like, man, he's a great actor that he could make his voice sound like that and talk so professional. And she told him, she was like, we got a black guy at work that talks just like that. And he didn't believe her. And so she was going to call to let him hear me to prove that we don't sound like the videos and the movies. And just to understand this, and before we take it like the way this sounds like it's going, understand her background. Their family raises horses. They're on a farm in the middle of nowhere. They know horses and people and farms and horses. Zero interaction with Black people other than when she came to work. And remember, I told you, I'm the only one at those tables. So it wasn't any of me before I got hired there. So that's their interaction other than what they saw on TV. Now, some can say, oh, you're a little naive. Maybe they were, but they had never heard it, and other than movies. And so that let me know, like, wow, for one, I didn't do it to get her to say that in the future to her boyfriend, but me being me changed that in two people. So then moving forward, I understood in order to get more of me at the table or more of me to get past the interview process, I do have to be a little bit more deliberate about how I carry myself or how it's perceived and recognizing those stereotypes, because they would come up in conversations before and I didn't get it. It would be over my head until you're replaying something later on, like, oh, what I got to work on? Then you hear this is what Roger said. That was this. But in the moment, I'm just having a conversation. So even having that experience with her helped me be a lot more deliberate about my interactions moving forward, because there was bias and there were things that I had to break down in order to have those conversations.
Yeah, and I think this, Sam, is things that are happening day to day that we don't step back and reflect and think about. Right? And I like the fact that you're bringing up, it's like, what are people exposed to when they're going through their own journey of life? Because that brings with them their knapsacks of how they perceive things with people that they're interacting. So exactly what you said, if you're in a community where you're not exposed to people of diversity and people of different cultures, then you're not going to have the ability to see how different people in the actual culture themselves are different, right? Everybody is different and brings something different. Two people who are of the same race will not necessarily be exactly the same. And that's like all the way across, right? And I think that for some people that is hard to at first realize, right? Because I like the fact that you've cracked this open about stereotypes, and us as health and safety professionals taking a step back and thinking about that when we are interacting with an employee who may be fewer of that race or that religion or whatever they are than the dominant in that employment. What barriers and stereotypes might that person also have to be walking through in their journey, right? That's one thing I think that people listening to the show can take out of this, is that we do need to be more open-hearted when we're interacting with people, in both our peers and employees in the workplace.
Right. And the reason, even taking that a step further past that, when we talk safety, that's imperative to safety. So, if I go out and I'm going to do an inspection and there's a guy on the roof and he's on the edge and he doesn't have fall protection, race, background, where he grew up, what his beliefs, what he voted for is irrelevant to me doing what I say I believe in that moment. I don't, so, and that's the other part is in this, when we start really going to safety, yes, it's with employers, but down to our profession, none of that matters in that moment. Our job is making sure they go home. That's, I mean, that's, and we say it, but that at the end of the day, that's where our worth comes from, or decreases. The more people we send home, the more we're worth. The less people we send home, it goes the other way. So I don't care who you voted for. I don't care about your hat, what color it is. Today you're going home. Put this on or go home without it on. But either way, you'll live. That, you know, has to be our approach.
Absolutely. And keeping in mind too, like everybody comes with a different perception of risk.
Right.
So,
right.
You know, what I've traveled through in life is going to curve what I see as a potential risk or hazard and what isn't. As whereas what you've walked through in life, you're going to be exposed to different things as well. And so your perception of what a risk might be or hazard might also be different. And so it's kind of getting aligned so that we're understanding and are on the same page to making sure that whatever safety practices are necessary, there's a common understanding. Would that be a fair statement?
That's fair, and it's perfect, and because it opens up 2 points. There is, we do know for the most part nobody shows up to get hurt. So even when I say that, it's not like, oh, you wanted to. Nobody shows up to get hurt unless they did show up to get hurt. So it's one of two things: either that person is comfortable in that situation, they've done it for years, they don't see the threat, and I need to bring them back, educate them, get them on my side of thinking here. Or they did come to work to jump off. Now I need to have this conversation with you, and we need to take this somewhere else. But either way, you're right. That the risk there is different. Either they don't really see themselves taking the risk, or they're about to take the ultimate risk. So it's see them, find out why they are where they are, and then bring them back. And that's the approach. And we're talking falls, but that's any of those hazards we see on site. Let's figure out why they are where they are. And, that's a common thing I ask if I'm on a site is, hey, what you doing there? Why are you doing it that way? Let me hear that side first before I just say, whoever said the regulation is that, let's figure out why they're doing it. They may have went through your 10 things and found out this was the safest option available in that moment. So, that part too.
Absolutely. Listening and understanding where the person is at the moment. That's a critical skill. Thank you for sharing that and getting people to think about that. So from your experiences so far, what do you believe it really takes to be a successful safety professional?
So that's a lot, and it's a lot packaged in there. But two things that jump out at me is persistence. Three things: persistence, passion, and don't take it personal. Just so happen those are all 3 P's, but persistence, passion, and don't take it personal. I mean, and passion, and I'll start with that one because I work with safety professionals. Those that are good, like you say, a good safety professional, they care about what they do. They care about people. They genuinely care. Some are just doing a job. Some are just doing the job. This is what it said as my task on the job I applied for. I'm going to do these, and I'm going to do just enough to stay hired. I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to the ones who want to be a good one. That passion has to be there. Then let me jump to don't take it personal. The guy I just talked about on the roof. If I'm there and he's been doing this for 30 years this way, and I come back and talk to him, and I convince him to put on fall protection that day or use some form of fall protection that particular day, and I come back and see it again, he's not saying, screw you, Sam. This is who he is. It's not personal. Let's have this conversation. Let's drive it in a little bit more. Have us take time to break. And I think, as safety professionals, some of us get slanted and don't continue to grow because we take those things personal, which leads me to the being persistent. The other thing I see as safety professionals is once we take those things personal, we start to say, okay, well, I'm going to leave Bob alone over here. I'm going to just go talk to the 8 who listen to me. Well, the 8 that listen to you are doing what they need to do. Bob's your concern, but Bob's your responsibility. So that persistent to, okay, I've said it this way 3 times. Let me change the way I'm saying this. Let me try a different approach. But that's being persistent until you figure out which approach works for Bob, because what finally gets Bob to put it on isn't the same thing that got Chris to wear it yesterday. And that's the thing is we want to take this and throw it at you a couple of times and say, forget it, let me go over here where it works. But those are the three things. If you're not passionate about it, you won't be good at it. If you take it personal, you won't be in it long, or you'll be burned out, and your weekends and your nights and everything will be miserable. And if you want results, you're gonna have to be persistent. Change takes time.
I wanted to change gears a little bit and kind of get to know Sam, off work Sam, cool. You know. Cool. And so can you share a little bit, like, what kind of things are you, Sam, doing when you're not wearing that safety hat and you're out doing other things?
So when I'm not wearing the safety hat, well, I got 4 kids, but two at home, and I'm married. So I got a daughter that's a senior now who runs track. I got a son who's 7th grade. He plays football and rugby. In the off seasons, I'm their trainer. They're both coming into season now. So a lot of times with my daughter right now, it's more of kind of working with her after practice kind of deals. We do something where we kind of read together. So we're both readers. So we do a lot of where we'll buy a book and we'll sit in the room and we read in this separate books. We aren't reading the same thing, but we'll sit there and she's reading hers, I'm reading mine for an hour. I do a lot of that. My son, I'm also his rugby coach. So I volunteered for one of the local youth rugby clubs, rugby team, 7th and 8th grade team, and I'm one of the coaches there. So with him, we're in the off season where we do conditioning every Sunday, but Monday through Friday, I'm his coach. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, we do rugby practice. The other days we do conditioning and some weight training. And then stuff with my wife, we do on weekends, probably every other weekend, we hang out with some other couples. And then in between there, we throw in some date night stuff. So that's the family stuff I'm doing. Then every Saturday, I volunteer 3 hours to a local boxing club that opens their doors for 3 hours to the youth. And so this is open if they're youth, if they got, problems they're dealing with in school or any of that kind of stuff, they come in there and we'll spend the first hour taking them through boxing, get you sweating, teach you some stuff, whether it's self-defense or just confidence. And then we go sit on the mat. So it's a boxing gym, but it has an MMA or a mixed martial arts side. Take our shoes off, go sit on the mat, and we talk about life. What's your problems? What is this? What does it mean to be, some of the stuff I talked about earlier, what does it mean to be on time? What does it mean to have, what's your reputation and things like that? So we do a lot of just helping them with obstacles through the week. So I do that every Saturday. And then right now, every Sunday for 2 hours, I volunteer the time for the rugby team where we do conditioning. Here in another couple of weeks, that'll be every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. So that's a lot of what I do in my off time. Is giving. One of the things that my wife's been telling me is I still need to find something to do for myself, by myself, just to, woosah. And so I've never been into golf, never really watched it, but I think I might find me a golf coach here soon and take that up just to go find something to actually do for myself other than reading and working out. So.
Well, let's explore that a little bit, something to do for yourself. Because I'm actually in the same boat as you. And I used to play the flute. Nice. And so I've been thinking about, well, maybe I should get back into that, because that's like a solitary moment that you can just think and reflect. If you did do something for Sam, what would that look like? You mentioned golf.
So the only reason I mentioned golf, because it's something I haven't done. One of the things I'm learning with myself is that's what I just told you is I spend most of my time, but I do a lot of stuff. So, and when I say that, it means I'm a retired pro boxer. I actually coach and manage pros. So a lot of my time I spend when I do my workouts, it's boxing workouts are half of the week, and the other ones I do some lifting and cardio. But those used to be my solitary time. Now, when I'm boxing, I'm thinking about what can I work on with this fighter? What can I do with this? So it's taking my brain away. And when I lift and work out, that used to be another time, throw on my headphones, my music. But now I'm thinking about training and coaching. Okay, maybe the kids need to work on this. Maybe I can bring kettlebells to practice and help with their, and so those don't take me away because they're attached to other things. And so it's kind of new for me just to figure what's that thing. The same thing, I do walk. I love getting out in nature and just walking. And that's great for me mentally, but that's where most of my thoughts and new ideas come from. So it ends up more of a, let me write this down. So golf, I'm looking for something that I can detach from everything else in life to see if it really can draw me away.
Absolutely. And I think that goes back, like one of the things you were talking about was like mental health and finding that special something for yourself, for your own mental health, so you can detach, as you said, and just kind of be in the moment, enjoying what's going on without having your brain rush off to, as you said, oh, I've got another idea, let me write it down, right?
Right. Well, it's necessary. And I know that's one of the things we talk about, giving, and I give because it ignites me to do it. It's not fake. It's not an agenda. Half of the stuff I just talked about, like I don't post all that on my social media anyway, because it's not to say, ooh, look at me. I'm helping the kids. I don't need to tell you every week what they talked about, But the other thing that we don't talk about when we give and volunteers and stuff, and I know you can relate to, is even when you're giving because you love it and it's helpful, it's still draining. It's draining physically and it's draining mentally. In some of that, we forget the people who are givers usually don't have anybody else to draw from. And so no matter how you slice it, it's a cup. If I'm giving it here, and you're giving it there, nothing's filling this back up. So at some point, even the kids that I'm helping, let's just say every Saturday, I gotta get up, go to the gym, drive there, get ready to do this, talk to the kids or whatever. At some point, if I'm never putting anything back in me, even at some point, 6 months down the line, 9 months, my help for them changes. Now I'm showing up later. Now when they have something to say, I don't have the interaction that they need that might have literally helped the kid that week. So I think so many times as helpers and volunteers, we don't fill ourselves back up. And in most cases, the ones that I know that are like me, we usually don't have anybody else to go to. So everybody comes, just honestly, and I'm not saying it like Superman, but everybody comes, if there's a problem, they come to me. Sam's got you, he's got, and they're right. I'm gonna do what I can to get it done or get them to the right person, but I don't have that. So it's, how do I mentally get myself to keep going? And then how do I be able to give back to them?
Yeah, and I think a piece that you're bringing out was re-energizing your battery. Right. So that those moments when you said you have children, you have kids that you're also giving to, and as a parent myself, like you have to be in the moment with your child when they're sharing stuff that it may really not be as of top of mind for you, but for them it is. And so you have to give that break and focus, which, as you said, if you're tired and you're stressed, that's very hard to do. So having those moments where you've taken that time out to figure out, how do I recharge Sam's battery so Sam can be then the best Sam for those who you are giving to. It's so critical.
Right. And so that brings up something that I didn't know if I was going to go there, but your response brought up something, especially when it comes, it's one thing to help, but especially when it comes to being there for family. So again, I know when we do these, we're supposed to sound like I've always had it together. I woke up and I was this person. There's life experiences help you get this. People also forget the person who's helping is helping in many cases because they overcame, or they needed help in this situation. They couldn't find anybody. They got through and they're trying to help somebody else. So the thing with the mental health to me, the reason it's so personal and I'm adamant about it is there was a time where I wasn't there for my kids, for my family, including my wife, because I'm too busy helping everybody else who's not helping me. So yes, the community needs you. Yes, the kids need coaches. Yes, they need mentors. But I got two at home that, where's dad? I got a wife at home. When's the last time we talked? And it's right, because as soon as somebody else needs it, you need it. So when you do get depleted and when there is nothing there, who do you go to? And if nothing else, is family. I'm sitting there, I'm around them, and I'm just soaking them up. So they're there for my rescue. But and again, I didn't get that because it just made sense. I had a scenario, and I'll talk around it because it's not to point the people out. But there was some years ago, I coached rugby for about 2 years for a high school, and during that time, I was super huge on Instagram. I posted everything. I talked about everything. It was all out there. Had this following, and it was cool. And when you coach, and especially if you coach in high school, sure you're coaching, but you're mentoring somebody's kids. These are young men in high school. You're influencing who they're going to be 2 years from now, a year from now. Absolutely, your interaction, what you do, what you expect from them, what you get out of them. So you're mentoring these kids. So in that space, I got I had the kids follow my Instagram, I had the parents follow my Instagram, and I'll just say this, I blew up in weight. I mean, when I tell you over those 2 years, I'll say it. I mean, it's scary to admit, but I got to 418 pounds. So at 418 pounds, I, again, not only am almost not about to be here for my family, which is another thing, but I had to stop. I was doing too much. I was helping them, and not just to point the rugby out, I was also helping a boxing gym across town, both for free, at the same time. I couldn't do both. And I decided, okay, I got to stop rugby. I didn't stop boxing. I stopped rugby. When I tell you back then, you used to post, and the family and everybody, they like it, they share it, they this. One day after I was no longer the coach, all unfollow, all stop this. And then you sit there again, you're sitting there now like, wow, who am I left with? I'm left with this family who I've neglected while I was helping them. Because 6 months later, I had to stop coaching the rugby team. The boxing team, same thing, disappeared. And so again, it's one thing to be, helpful and replenishing yourself, but it's another thing to be there for the ones that's in your house, be there for your family, because even if my kids can't help me, sitting there and just soaking them up and watching them in their house and watching their movement, it ignites me, it fuels me. I can smile about it. So even if they can't say anything, my wife looking over and knowing I'm going through and just smile. That's the stuff that none of them were given and none of them can help with. So it's imperative to be there, like you said, in that moment. Sure, go give, but don't neglect while you're giving. And that's what I took from both of those experiences. And it took it to happen twice to be like, wow, I'm helping the world, and who's there for me? The family that I didn't see for 2 years because I was helping everybody else.
And I also, Sam, what you've just said now, looking at the people around you, that they matter, giving that energy and time matter, giving it to your children, giving it to your wife, giving it to your family, because those are going to be the people who are going to have sustainable relations with you throughout life. So if you remember in the green room, we were talking about healthy giving and taking relationships, having balance, right? That's a part of that too.
Yes.
So no, I like what you're talking about. You've got a great mix of things going on. I love the fact too that, you talked about your partner, your wife, and the fact that you have things going on, the mixed couples, the date night stuff, in order to feed that relationship too. So it's good to hear this and seeing how you've got a really good balance now about feeding positive energy into the different relationships, because we don't talk about that a lot in our session, like in our profession. We're health and safety professionals, but what does that really mean when we look holistically at the total worker? And we're a total worker too. Right.
Well, and that's the other part with health and safety professionals. A lot of times work can be so stressful. We come home and don't want to talk or don't want to do this. It was that kind of day. But those days add up, those days add up over a career, over a year, and then soon you end up this way or that far apart because of how many days you didn't talk, and sometimes we have those days, sometimes she has those, but we can sit and turn a movie on and both be quiet too. So it's in that moment, even if we don't want to talk, we can not talk together.
It's okay. Right? You don't have to talk together all the time. You can sit back and enjoy something like a movie or music or whatever. And that kind of led me into the next thing I wanted to kind of find out about Sam was, has there been anything that has been really influential, like really influenced you over the years? That could be books or movies, shows, etc. Like influencers, anybody, anything. Let us know about that.
Oh, I'm a I grab. I'm influenced by a lot of stuff if it's positive and it's moving forward. So my kind of stuff like books, to me, the first one that comes to mind is one Relentless. It was by one of Kobe Bryant's coaches. One is Peak Performance, and Peak Performance, I'm listening to it now for the fourth time and still getting stuff out of it. And I forget the authors, but that one really hones in how we grow from rest, which is, something with safety, something in our professions, something that they find out the top athletes, the top performers, the top artists, the top authors all prioritize rest just like they do work. And all of us, we're working, both ends of the candle. We don't stop, we help. And we realize we're doing just enough to be good at it or decent at it. But the greats are great because they have the courage to rest. So that one I'm listening to now, again, talk about all the stuff I'm doing. I'm listening to it for the fourth time to keep getting nuggets out of it, to keep restarting my own rest. So that's a big one for me. Just about every book from James Baldwin has influenced me in some way. I've taken little bits and pieces from those. Movies was a couple of them, which is ironic because they're both, in theory, they're both women movies. We'll say women, but Color Purple, it was just huge because I could just relate to everything in there. So I was raised by my mom. My mom raised 6 of us. It's not that I'm ashamed of saying that. I don't like telling the story that tells somebody else's story. That's her story to tell. But I was raised by my mom. So, that movie, I just saw a lot, the strength and the growth and the power I saw in that I could resonate with. And ironically, one of my favorite movies that I've already watched a couple of times now is Woman King. So Woman King. So those influenced me. And then and I say this, sometimes I hesitate to share this, but it's true because if people don't get the meaning, one of my probably biggest influences in life was actually Malcolm X. And the reason I say that is it depends on what people remember about him or what their perception is. But mine really had nothing to do with his politics or what people could perceive as hate or anything. Mine's with Malcolm X, what really influenced me as a person was who he started as. So he started as this criminal, whatever, he's in prison, he learns about this religion or this, whatever people want to call it. And he changed because that was better than who he was. As he got in there, he preached that, he learned it, he believed it. He went overseas, he went to Mecca, he went to some other places, and he learned what his understanding of, people in his religion wasn't the same in other places. So he then changed his opinion or what he had been known for saying, and was able to preach more of togetherness and moving forward, regardless of race. And what I really, so the thing was, what he was when you run into him was the best version of himself with the information he knew at the time. And he wasn't scared to get new information or new ideas and change. Whereas a lot of us are, I've said this for 20 years, I got to stick to it. But, if science and this and everything proves there's another way or a better way, he wasn't afraid to change that. And ironically, reason I understand why people are scared to do that, because him doing that is literally what got him killed. So he would have been better off to stay with the one group that he felt was wrong at that time, because he would have protection and it wouldn't have been more than one side after you. Now everybody hated him by the time he was the third version of himself. And he knew that was coming. So for me, what I took from that is just, hey, not being afraid. This is who I was, this is my background. This is my, my upbringing. And I can relate to that, not because of going to prisons or not for going for that, but me, as you introduced, this guy who owns this safety company, who's been doing safety for 23 years, who did this for 16 years for companies. I did that. I came from the neighborhood that the streets were brick. Like, they didn't even pave our streets. Like, our street, when you come across the railroad tracks, and our neighborhood was called the Brickyard because they didn't even bother to throw asphalt across it. So it was, so that's the neighborhood I came up in. I come from where my next door neighbors and two doors down and my best friend all killed as teenagers by gunshot. So I come from that. I come from the coolest people that we knew were drug dealers because they had the new cars and the new clothes and that. So yes, I can relate to him coming from a certain background, getting education and getting the understanding and changing with that. So that's how I come from where I come from to being able to live where I live now, to have the background on my wall in the back, this cute back here, versus the wall that I grew up in where there were holes in it. So that's why he was an influence for me. I took, you know, I always tell people when I make a decision based off of the best information I have at that time. And if 2 weeks from now I learn something else and I'm wrong, I've always been okay going back and saying I was wrong. That was the decision I made that day based off of that. And that's why I say it was influenced with me. That's kind of how not the politics side, but I live life off of that is give me the information, give me the rules. Yeah. I'll make a decision based off of that.
And I like that you're bringing this up, right? Again, it goes back to some things that we talked about before about understanding people, what journeys people have gone through, because we all change throughout our journey of life. Yeah, no, this has been a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today. This has been great.
Thanks. I really appreciate you having me. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it. I really did.
Thank you, Sam.
No problem.
And for everybody listening, thank you for tuning in.